Oh boy. It's still ongoing. I feel like my hopes for Mio subside a bit.
Yeah, true. It's like, oh, late game, Mio Micah.
Uh-oh.
Ay, ay, ay. My heart goes out to Mio. I hope we have at least one Zerg player in the semis.
I think Mio knows what a spellcaster is. His preferred style of countering Skytoss was Hydralisk into Muta into Hydralisk into Muta again.
Hey, look, sometimes it works. Oh god, but here we go. We are diving into our first semifinals match and spawning in the bottom left-hand corner of Hardwire LE. We have our Polish Protoss player representing Storm Gaming. It is Gerald.
And spawning in the top left-hand side corner, top right-hand side corner of Hardwire LE, playing for Team Super, it is TriGGeR.
Gerald, he's made it past the Terrans. PvT confirmed winnable. But what about PvP? Is PvP winnable?
PvP is not winnable. Protoss has a 100% win rate versus Protoss in this.
True.
It's disgusting.
It also has a 100% loss rate as well.
Yeah.
As we get into this game, and honestly, I'm a little bit surprised. We do see some pretty standard locations for our gateways. No one went for a gate expand. I did see that TriGGeR has been playing a lot with it on some of the other maps, but looks like here against Gerald doesn't want to be that greedy.
Gate expand is kind of rough first patch. Like, you just have to blind play Robo if they're going 4-gate, and like you can't do that every single game. It's gotten a lot worse after the Void Ray and nerfs. Although
true.
Offensive shield batteries have gotten worse as well.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird dynamic, right? Where it did kind of nerf like Proxy Stargate Void Ray, for example, that tries to punish that. But it also nerfed your ability to defend with Void Rays as well, just because they're so much more expensive and they take longer.
A very, very delicate balance of defending and micro, and like the fact that it comes out 6 seconds later and costs 51 minutes, like it just upset that balance. So much so that like players like TriGGeR and Max Packs have gone away from the 1-gate and are playing 2-gate expand now.
Feels bad, man. Feels bad. Oh god. But what I will say is that, TriGGeR still does it from time to time. We have been lucky enough to see him do it in NA Apprentice. Last week we were able to cast TriGGeR versus Pili, but we'll see how he does here against Gerald. So far, we have had our kind of standard openers, except Gerald's looking to be a little bit more aggressive with his double adept.
And also, TriGGeR opening Stalker matches up well if you can catch the Stalkers, but does miss them. He's gonna need to get this block off. Because if the adepts get into the main base, that's gonna be very deadly for his middle line or his sentries.
Yeah, here we go. The shades are going in, but TriGGeR does barely block off that wall, but did end up losing his probe in the process.
And he is going to get the shade away, which means that's just free damage. Like usually you need to have a recall in these situations, but because of the location of TriGGeR's stalkers on the map, he's just getting to shade around freely, pretty much, and his basically got TriGGeR a bit uncomfortable compared to where you usually are.
Oh yeah, exactly. So a nice start here from Gerald. Not like the biggest of damages, but again, just keeping TriGGeR at home, especially because these adepts are still alive. TriGGeR does try and catch some of them, and he's dishing out a decent amount of damage to one of them, but again, they will survive.
Something of note is Gerald's exceptionally fast Robo facility, which TriGGeR does scout with the hallucination. This means that, like, apart from these two adepts, he basically has zero scouting information on what TriGGeR is doing, without any strategies of his own. So maybe this Robo Bay is just playing it safe versus Duck Templar, and getting an observer out, and also to get an observer out to see what's going on in TriGGeR's base as the adepts commit into the natural.
Oh, that they do. They get 2, maybe 3. Okay, just 2 probe kills. But now, thankfully, TriGGeR can breathe a sigh of relief. Finally, they've been cleaned up. Finally, he doesn't have to worry about them. But again, they did more than they really should have.
TriGGeR is going for a move out, and blink timing is well, exactly even. So yeah, this is gonna come down to the amount of units. And Gerald without sentries, he might be in a bit of an awkward position if TriGGeR decides to play this sort of angle where he can force field them out next to the rocks.
Yeah, he does kind of have that advantage that he can leverage. He actually hasn't scouted the 3rd, by the way, which is a bit of a shame. Very reminiscent to the previous series that we had, where one of our players didn't realize how vulnerable a location was, and TriGGeR backs off. And yeah, now with the Salute, you will finally see that 3rd.
Since Gerald didn't start a start a forge, TriGGeR is going to have the advantage in upgrade since he started his own forge. So he doesn't need to get all too much done. Like, he's already forced units to be made from Gerald instead of probes, which is good enough.
Oh yeah. So kind of nice advantage that he will have eventually, but meanwhile, Gerald does have high ground vision with that observer. He blinks into the main base. Oh my god, the Twilight Council is gonna get sniped! Oh.
Yeah, this is actually why most product players opt to expand at the triangular 3rd instead of the linear 3rd, just to prevent these sorts of blink-ins that can be painful. Honestly, I would have preferred from Gerald if he blinked into the mineral line and then recalled out potentially. That has the potential to deal like 9-10 probes worth of damage rather than just a Twilight, which is only 150-100.
Yeah, maybe he could have been a little bit more greedy there. To be fair, he didn't quite know the position of his opponent's army, so I guess he wanted to get whatever damage he could as fast as possible. Regardless, sniping that Twilight Council was pretty huge. Did have to be remade, did delay charge as well. So Gerald will be able to get his that little bit faster.
What's currently killing TriGGeR is his lack of map vision. He has an observer sitting at his natural, probably scared of DTs because he has no cannons. But he just doesn't know where Gerald's army is, and so he's forced to play very defensive on the map. And also, like, keeping his army split between like the natural and the 3rd.
Yeah, it's not not the most ideal place to be, and now he's kind of stuck here. Meanwhile, Gerald can, in a way, do what, he can be as active as he wants, which is exactly what he's been doing. He got into the main base earlier, now he's rotating around as well, throughout the middle of the map, and we'll see how things come to like a head here as TriGGeR, surprisingly, despite having the later robo, okay, never mind. I thought it was going to take a lead in Immortals, but no, he's catching up. He's catching up.
What TriGGeR does have a lead in is upgrades, and if he starts +2 on time, after he finishes +1, he's gonna have a +2 timing, which could be quite strong.
Oh boy, and there we go. As you say it, +1 finishes and +2 starts immediately. So TriGGeR will have that timing available to him. At the same time, we do see him expanding and taking a 4th base. Army in position to take it, as Gerald also takes his own. So yeah, but basically that's kind of what we're going to be focused on, is that timing to see if TriGGeR can hit it and do something with it.
And both players are going for the type of army where upgrades are king. None of them are opting to go for disruptors, which sort of negate the effect of upgrades to an extent. Like, obviously they're still very helpful for your stalkers, but his since you're going for Charger Archon, like, those upgrades are going to matter a whole lot more.
Oh yeah. Speaking of, TriGGeR is also the first player to throw down a robotic space, so again, he will have that advantage as well, getting into those disruptors that little bit faster. I'm a little bit surprised that Gerald has delayed his for as long as he has, so that's going to be another way for TriGGeR to really, again, kind of get more ahead.
TriGGeR is actually enjoying like a decent eco lead, which is surprising given the event of the game. Maybe just Gerald thought he could get more done than he did, and maybe made a few too many units when he could have been making probes.
Yeah, I noticed that earlier he had like a 5 worker lead, and now it's slowly gotten even higher, which again is a little bit surprising. And now TriGGeR, he's finally feeling confident enough to move out on the map. Again, as a reminder, behind this, Robo Bay is on the way, and +2 is still 20 or so seconds away.
Taking up control is nice, but I would not want him to commit in just before his +2 upgrades finish, and just before his disruptors on the way. Like, this is sort of an anti-timing, and yeah, he pulls back.
Yeah, it really is. Oh, the War Prism! Oh, War Prism was left a little bit idle. Gerald does get another nice snipe, and again, actually TriGGeR, he almost forces his hand here, and +2 still isn't done.
Yeah, this is a very, very rough timing. Just before +2 engages, Gerald's getting a nice wraparound with the Zealots, linking forward with his Stalkers, and this is just rough for TriGGeR.
Yeah, exactly. Finally, +2 finishes, but it's a little bit too late. Zealots are closing the distance as well. We do have a couple of reinforcements coming in for TriGGeR, but he already lost his Immortal. Oh my god, the Nova goes off!
A big shot, but it's honestly a little bit too late. Like, battery overcharge is good, but Gerald has 6 Archons.
Yeah, and all he has to do is just wait out that overcharge and then maybe die back in. He was just waiting for a couple more reinforcements. TriGGeR even going for a Dark Shrine when behind. Of course, that's what you have to go for. Still has that upgrade lead, but as you said, there are just so many Archons.
He doesn't have an Observer.
Oh!
Nice splits coming out from Gerald, but it does leave his Archons vulnerable. And with the Archon got mostly gone, TriGGeR can warp in Zealots, and he will be able to defend this, I believe.
Yeah, we just need that warp, and we have a couple of Zealots on the way, but the Archons are on top of said warp, and with the help of this Immortal as well, Gerald is still trading oh so favorably, and TriGGeR just can't regain control of his natural.
I guess he didn't have the warp-ins ready on time. But yeah, he's going to need a very nice Disruptor shot right now. Oh, but nice blink.
Yeah,
this is the beginning of the end for TriGGeR.
Exactly, he just dives on the Disruptor. Overcharge is being used, and that will help for a little bit, but in come the reinforcements of Gerald, and Gerald finally has his own Disruptor.
TriGGeR's only on 8 gateways, which isn't really enough to spend all of the money that you're getting. He does have the Dark Trend finished, and Gerald has no detection, so if he just walked in a few DCs, he would be able to push back this army.
Yeah, and something important to note is that we don't really have too much economic damage dealt to TriGGeR, so his economy, like his probe count, is still relatively healthy, but we don't see any DTs. We see Stalkers and Zealots being warped in here for TriGGeR, not DTs.
Put that Dark Shrine to work. When behind, Dark Shrine.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, maybe it's slipping TriGGeR's mind a little bit as he's continuing to warp in more Zealots. Yeah,
Okay, 2 DTs now coming in, and Gerald, he should probably pause Disruptor production for a bit so he can get some detection out for this army.
Yeah, he's actually getting 2 more Robos behind this. The DTs do force Gerald out, and TriGGeR survives, but again, he's down almost 20 probes.
And since he has such a big gas bank, he is making Archons, which is honestly probably one of the worst units you can have in Disruptor Wars. Like, they're slow, they're chunky, and they don't have Blink to get out of the way of Disruptors.
Yeah, and Disruptor Wars should be what we're getting into, especially because Geralt was getting his 2nd and 3rd Robo up and running. There we go, Disruptors are now on the way. At the same time, he's still being mobile with these Stalkers, still just giving TriGGeR a hard time. I don't want to count TriGGeR completely out there yet, just because, you know, Disruptor shots can still make and break fights for you.
Gerald's going to need to get up to the sort of economy where he has like Zealot DT flames along with these. Although TriGGeR's Disruptor count isn't the most impressive. Like, it is true, 1 or 2 Disruptor shots and he could be getting back into the game. If he has the economy to keep making them and making the reinforcing units. And that's a big if.
Exactly, like he's down an entire base at this point. Meanwhile, massive shout out to Apoptosis in the chat. Thank you for the raid. We appreciate it. We appreciate it. Everyone nail everything down. The Goblin Horde is here. And oh boy, we'll see if the NA support is going to be enough here for TriGGeR, because Geralt, he is almost maxed out.
He does not have blink available, but
Oh.
ooh, those were the sort of shots we needed for TriGGeR if you wanted to remain in the game. But with Gerald landing these, TriGGeR is not long for this world.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't have any more disruptors left. He will get a couple of kills here, but the base is falling, and there are just too many stalkers available for Gerald. A couple more disruptors coming in for TriGGeR, and he will get a good shot up, but he needed more than that.
You really need like 2 or 3 shots of those size if you want to have a chance of even surviving here, let alone coming back into this game.
Exactly. GG gets called, and Geralt will take a lead in this series 1-0. Ah.
I will say the one advantage Gerald had over TriGGeR at that exact moment they fought was army size. Now TriGGeR had the faster upgrades, the disruptors coming in, so I feel like it wasn't overall too necessary for him to be out that far on the map where he could get caught into an engagement.
Yeah, I have to agree. Like, that was probably the biggest misstep, right? That TriGGeR was being as active as he was before he had, you know, his advantages, right? The upgrades, the disruptors, like, they were all on the way, and they were all faster than Geralt. And then the fight happened without them. Like, feels bad, man. Feels bad. Oh. But here we go. Hopefully, our Canadian Protoss can kind of shake that loss off and, you know, recoup. And here we are, getting into game 2.
We played on Blackburn, and it's interesting because Gerald, he's not the biggest fan of one gate expand, even on these sorts of maps with ramps that are typically like the domain of one gate expand territory. So I would be not too surprised if we see a 1 gate versus 2 gate matchup going on now.
Ooh, we'll see if that's what we get, because here we have our Polish Protoss player representing Storm Gaming. In the bottom left-hand corner of Blackburn, we have Geralt.
And spawning in the right-hand corner of Blackburn, indeed making his pattern on the low ground, is Team Super's TriGGeR. Huh. TriGGeR went for a very fast assimilator and a very late gateway. I've not seen this before.
Interesting. We'll keep an eye on this. I mean, overall, you did call it that, you know, TriGGeR, of course, whenever he can, on these ramp maps, he does go for that low ground pylon. Geralt, I guess, just doesn't feel too comfortable with it. Understandable. Like, it is a risk to take. But does he really plan to do anything to stop this or to delay this? I'm sure his problem.
Yeah. I mean, this is a very familiar dynamic to those who've watched PvP in the last year and a half. Where you have the probe just trying to delay the Nexus as much as possible to prevent the 1 gate expander from getting their Nexus down on time, forcing them to do things like make a Zealot, an extra pylon maybe on 28, 29 supply.
Oh yeah, and maybe even force out some tech as well, because we should be seeing, you know, maybe even a pylon, maybe even a cyber core here from Gerald, as he's being as annoying as possible.
Yeah, I'm not sure with Gerald's follow-up what he's gonna do. I just know he plays 2 gate. I'm not sure what exactly he does with the 2 gate on these 1 gate expand maps.
And what he's doing right now makes sense, right? He's making 2 adepts to go across the map. A ramp like this is that much more awkward to wall off, so the likelihood of these adepts getting in is that much higher, especially if he's able to keep the attention of TriGGeR at his natural or on delaying on this probe. Up.
Oh. Does he get it? Does he get it?
Ah!
Oh. Gets the probe, drops on the Nexus. However, this has kept his Zealot on the other side of the map, so he has no warning of these 2 adepts shading across the map.
Yeah, the adepts are about to rock up. There is a probe to wall off, but again, it's all about the reaction time of TriGGeR. Up.
Gets the gateway wall off, and yeah, these adepts shouldn't get too much done now. So it now lies on the Oracle to get some damage, or maybe 2 Oracles to get the damage he needs to equalize the game.
Yeah, as the Oracles are on the way for both of our players. They did both go for Stargate follow-ups. TriGGeR, both players, I should say, are ready for them. We already have shield batteries in either of their mineral lines. So as you said, it will take more than 1 Oracle to really deal so much damage, or a stasis trap.
TriGGeR's actually going for a very aggressive move out, and looks like he's going to be forced to finish this gateway, or maybe this was his plan all along. And yeah, he's going to be able to get some damage on this Nexus.
Oh god, he is. Meanwhile, we do have a stasis in the main base of TriGGeR. He does pull away in time. He's perfectly fine. He does finish up that wall. And what does Gerald have at home to defend? He's forced to come back, and in comes TriGGeR with his own Oracle.
Does have a shield battery, but yeah, this place has done the stasis just like Gerald. Gets 3 probes with it, but with this shield battery, he will be able to defend an Oracle. But he does not have the units to trade against the gateway, and so he's forced to pop battery overcharge.
Oh yeah, overcharge should be able to keep this Stalker alive for the time being. TriGGeR trying to go for some probes there. At the same time, TriGGeR defends the Oracles at home, and we even see a recall.
So now TriGGeR has opted for a fast blink, and Gerald, he does not have a Twilight Council completely done or even started, so he's going into Phoenix. TriGGeR, he's gonna have a big opportunity, I feel like, with how fast his blink is compared to Gerald.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be massive. So Gerald has to make use of this second Oracle that TriGGeR didn't invest in. Here we go, the 2 Oracles do dip into the natural mineral line. We do see that the Stalkers are gonna be able to deal with them, but not before 6 probes go down.
With how low that Oracle is, I'd almost be tempted to start a Phoenix if I was TriGGeR right now. Even though it's not what you want to go into. But yeah, like, the 6 probes, it is a lot of damage, and TriGGeR is not going to need to do something in response to this, with this sort of need that Gerald has in the economy now.
Yeah, as Gerald, he's up 5 probes now because that is fully saturated on 3 bases. And I'm sure we're both looking at that blink because, blink is going to finish up pretty soon. But TriGGeR behind this, instead he's taking a faster 3rd base. I mean, that is a way to, get back into this economically, I guess. But yeah, I'm surprised I didn't see like more gateways turned down instead.
Yeah, one thing to notice, he actually killed his gateway.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's one of the maps where you can like make a pylon at the edge of your wall to sort of glitch a probe out. But yeah, that's a 150 mineral loss.
Yeah.
Does catch the Phoenix.
Does catch it as he's moving out. He does have eyes on the 3rd base as well, but pushing up this ramp is going to be a bit of a tough ask. There are no shield batteries, but we have reinforcements. Again, we have that high ground advantage. Ooh, nice bait on that stasis trap. And he gets the Oracle.
Does get the Oracle, and with blink he's able to out micro Gerald, but he does not stay, and I'm not so sure about this because like with blink versus no blink, like it's such a big opportunity for you to maybe cancel with his 3rd base. He just maybe didn't have the Stalker count he was looking for and doesn't know the exact timing of Gerald's blink. Yeah,
exactly. He didn't know how much of a timing, how much of a window he had where he did have blink and his opponent didn't. And because of the lack of gateways, like being able to reinforce and like keep that pressure up wasn't as high. So yeah, TriGGeR, he does back off in the end, but he does retake that worker lead.
It is interesting. It's sort of the similar story both games where TriGGeR, he gets behind a bit early in the probe count, but continues probing while Gerald makes units to defend the counter attack.
Yeah, it's really cool how somehow, someway he's just able to, in a way, like out macro or out eco his opponent, despite having relatively similar tools. Meanwhile, oh my god, Gerald is switching things up completely, this time going for a much faster robotic spade.
I don't know. And there's very few attack paths. Like, this is a style that you can pull off. Now, TriGGeR, he does not have vision here, so he's going to be caught unawares by this blink. Or nice positioning though on his arm.
Oh yeah, thankfully he wasn't too far away. He does get back in here into the main base.
Yeah, does pick up the observer, which means this sort of move can't be repeated again, at least before another observer is out. However, TriGGeR, he, I believe, is not aware. He's not aware of Gerald's tech path choice. So he's got, I feel like, a bit of an opportunity now.
Yeah. I mean, charge is done, right? You know, we have a War Prism on the way, which does signify that TriGGeR wants to be aggressive. It's rallied to his army, so here we go. TriGGeR is pulling that trigger, and Gerald's, he's gonna have 2 disruptors for this, but how good are those shots gonna be?
He is also going to have a decent bit of static. Yeah, he has a decent bit of static at his third base, and this is a relatively hard position to push into. But TriGGeR, he is going to attempt, and with the charge lots, it is possible that he gets headway. However, it is a very defensible map, is a thing, and it's probably why Gerald chose this style.
Yeah, to be that greedy, to skip a couple of steps to go into those fast disruptors. Meanwhile, in come the reinforcements, in come a wave of Zealots. Nova goes off, and it connects with the Immortal, not with any of the army. Up!
These are not the Novas that Gerald is dreaming of, and TriGGeR, he's actually pushing and making headway, and yet these are not charge lots, these are slow Zealots, and Gerald is running out of static.
Exactly. The shield batteries are being taken out one after the other. Meanwhile, the Novas are about to reset, but Blink is still available. Oh, but he does get a decent shot off, but the Zealots are getting on top of these disruptors.
And with these disruptors going down and the probes going down as well, TriGGeR is taking a very, very big economical lead while resetting the tech of Gerald.
Yeah, exactly. As the Zealots continue to flood in, wave after wave, 33 probes just went down because there were Zealots even killing workers in the natural base, and these disruptors, they're left so exposed.
I feel like what was Gerald's downfall here is the positioning of his disruptors, like on the ramp.
Yeah.
TriGGeR was able to sort of zone out the disruptors with Zealots, while his Blink Stalker and Immortal Charge Lot Force went to work on the third base. And as a result, like, he wasn't able to defend the push.
GG gets called. As you said, there just weren't any disruptors there at that third base to be able to buy time, to be able to push TriGGeR away. Instead, he in a way kind of zoned himself out, and TriGGeR ties up the series 1-1.
Sort of what I expected coming into this series, where I feel like these players are very evenly matched and trade blows quite often in online cups because they are very active participants of them.
Oh yeah, exactly. I feel like we have really good representatives from our 2 regions here, and it's difficult to call who's going to really move on and make it to those grand finals. Is it going to be our Polish player or our Canadian? As I just got updated. Oh, I wish we casted it. I wish we were there. Mio Micah, 2-1 chance. He 2-1'd him. He took him down.
You're gonna need to cast those replays, man.
The Hydra pushes, mate. The Hydras are the real. They're doing it.
Yes, Hydra pushes. Emphasis on the push.
The Hydra timings.
Hydras are not a unit you want to fight later.
Yeah, exactly. We will have to get our hands on those replays. And if you want the replays for yourself in the chat, then consider subscribing to the channel. We do hand out replay packs to all of our subscribers. But enough about that, because we still have our upper semifinals. And sporting in the bottom right-hand corner of Curious Minds LE, we have our Polish Protoss player representing Storm Gaming. It is Gerald.
And spawning in the top left-hand corner of Curious Minds LE, playing for Team Super, it is TriGGeR.
Once again, going for that low ground.
Similar dynamic. Although this time TriGGeR going for the standard gateway timing and similar timing.
Yeah. Personally, how do you feel about this dynamic about trying to go for these like faster nexuses, or again going for the gateway expands on these maps?
I feel like it's the correct way to play on these maps with low ground walls. Although, like, there's a reason why Gerald plays the way he does. He just doesn't play. He doesn't play this for no reason. So yeah, maybe we'll see what he has in mind this game. Maybe he didn't get as much damage done last game as he would have liked.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because you have to deal damage and you have to also, again, like make up for the fact that your opponent is getting a faster base and should have like a higher probe lead, right? Like we saw how impressive that Oracle was in the first game, and even that wasn't enough, which is crazy to think about.
I feel like the key is just constant probe production. Like if you're this 2-gate player, maybe if you got 2-3 more probe kills, he has enough of a lead that he doesn't have to do this. But yeah, TriGGeR's just getting ahead through his early economical lead, allowing them to put out more tech and more pressure onto the map, forcing Gerald to stay very defensive and make more units than he would like.
Yeah. We'll see if we see more of the same here in this game. We can already see that Gerald is approaching this a little bit differently. This time he didn't go for the double adept opener. Instead we see a stalker, at least one stalker coming out from Gerald, so not looking to be anywhere near as aggressive with set adepts.
One zealot from TriGGeR getting the scout up at his impact 2-gate and being a bit annoying because without adepts, like, you don't really clear a zealot all too quickly. Oh! That's a very early probe pool.
Maybe a bit of an overreaction there from Gerald, I don't know. But TriGGeR, that zealot, more than paying for itself, forcing a lot of lost mining time there.
One thing to note is that TriGGeR, he does not have the confirmation that is Stargate, whereas Gerald, with his scouting probe, he already knows that TriGGeR is not only playing Stargate, but he knows that an Oracle is on the way.
True. Yeah, but the big brain plays because TriGGeR, behind his first Oracle, is going for a Phoenix.
And the Oracle flyaway flies straight past each other, and TriGGeR, now he knows the position of Gerald's Oracle. And the fact that he does have an Oracle. And yeah, Gerald going for 2 Oracle versus the Phoenix of TriGGeR. Wait, did he just cancel that Phoenix?
Wait, what? He did cancel it and remade it. Uh-oh.
There wasn't a misclick.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of a mistake there by TriGGeR. For a moment there, I thought he was getting a second Phoenix, but yeah, is remaking it. I mean, he's gonna be able to get it out in time anyway. So is it the biggest of a deal? I don't know. Hopefully it is in position because both Oracles are headed towards that main.
2 Oracles, you bypass the shield battery, and with only 2 Stalkers to defend, that's not enough DPS. And he's actually split between the main and the third, and the natural.
Oh yeah, exactly. The boys are pulled off the line, and immediately
that's actually very good defense from TriGGeR. Very good crisis management.
Yeah, loses what, maybe 1 probe and that's it. At the same time, the Oracle of TriGGeR did get a stasis ward off in that main base, got both of the stalkers, and managed to escape.
It is very bruised though, so it limits the further aggressive potential of the Oracle, and it's most likely going to be used defensively as a tool to stop DTs, for example. Like, that's the big advantage of Stargate openers, is the fact that you don't have to make the Robo Bay for the Observer. You have the Oracle for detection, so you can make more units than you would normally.
Yeah, so both players have to be so careful with their Oracles. TriGGeR is trying to hunt his opponents down, and that Phoenix is en route, but it looks like Gerald will be able to just barely keep alive with his Stalkers. Almost sniping that Phoenix.
Once again, TriGGeR does have the lead on the blink.
Yep.
Damages the Oracle a bit more. And yeah, with this lead, like, TriGGeR can afford to be playing quite aggressive if he knows roughly the timing of Gerald's blink.
Yeah, we saw last time how, again, he had that big opportunity and he didn't take it because he didn't know. So maybe he'll do it again this time, but he is here sitting at his third base, so the likelihood of that happening isn't too high. At the same time, though, TriGGeR is slipping in towards that natural base with his Oracle. Unfortunately, it took him a little bit too long to really do much with it, so Gerald does respond in time.
Once again, TriGGeR has a decent probe lead, decent lead in the tech, with him dropping down a Forge and a Robo Bay. Yeah, Gerald is going to have to play from behind again without getting the sort of damage again that he is looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, down in those workers, behind in the upgrades a little bit, far behind when it comes to its forge timing as well. Like TriGGeR is just so solid with this. Feels very practiced.
Yeah, Gerald does slip an Oracle Bite into the main base. Might be looking for a nice stasis. TriGGeR, very fast reaction.
Oh yeah. God, immediate response there. At the same time, Gerald tries to dip in, deal some decent damage to the Nexus, but unfortunately doesn't really break through those shields.
He does have 2 Adepts positioned, so like maybe while all of this was going on, if he had the Adepts shedding into the natural, there was the potential for equalizing damage.
Oh boy. Doesn't quite get in yet, as it looks like Gerald is trying to maybe intercept that Oracle, trying to catch it, and it looks like he may actually. Yup. Let's get it.
It's a nice pick of, and as well, Gerald has slipped into the main base with 2 Adepts. There are units to defend, but he is going to target fire down 4, 5, maybe 6 probes. Yeah, 6 probes. And yeah, so TriGGeR, he is behind economically, but he does have a Warp Prism and Charge finishing up very soon with the Gateway Explosion.
Yeah.
And Gerald, he does not have the most static at his third base.
He has 1 shield battery. He has literally 1 shield battery. Aye. We'll see if that's going to be enough here as TriGGeR is going to keep on warping in. Oh my god, the Phoenix gets sniped immediately, but I also don't know how I feel about this. Once again, hitting a bit of an anti-timing here for TriGGeR.
He does have very good positioning though, like he's fighting away from Gerald's shield battery. And yeah, Gerald's getting baited out and he's losing a lot of his zealots, and TriGGeR, he's beginning to build a sizable army lead through this trade.
Oh yeah, exactly. An overcharge runs out. That is it. That was the only overcharge available here for Gerald, and more zealots keep on rallying in 2 seconds. 1 second, we do have +1 kicking in for TriGGeR just in time for this fight, and I don't know if Gerald really has enough to defend here.
Gerald's SimCity is working against him, like, in a big time here. He's fighting into a concave of TriGGeR when TriGGeR is the attacker. That's exactly the opposite of where you want to be. He also doesn't have the shield battery overcharge, or even like shield batteries in general. Like, he just doesn't have the defensive tools you normally expect and this defensive positioning. As a result, TriGGeR's cleaning up.
He just didn't see this coming. He was not prepared at all for this. Finally, the upgrades are evened up, but the Stalker count is far too great. Every single boy was pulled earlier. This fight was going on long enough that we even have a second overcharge that's becoming a part of this, but we have more than enough Stalkers to just one-shot all the gateway units. GG gets called, and TriGGeR is our first finalist. Wow. GG.
See, I felt like we saw pretty much the same game as the last one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very similar. Like it just goes to show how solid TriGGeR is. When he does go for that kind of build. Yeah, wow. Very impressive. Yeah, and with that, TriGGeR, he is going to be the first to move on to the grand finals. But I was afraid. I thought we were going to have just PvP after PvP after PvP. We do not have a PvP StarDuck.